Okay everybody, number one, safety third when we're working with power tools and stuff, which we're going to be doing here. And what I want to show you is I'm getting ready to drill and tap LED retention module inside of this core for a DV6, but I'm also going to drill and tap a retention screw for the chassis. And to do this, I need my core of my DV6, I need my chassis with a battery in it, I need my 7/8 NeoPixel Hilt adapter holder. I'm going to need an assortment of 832 set screws and an Allen key, and I'm going to need a drill bit for 832 and a tap for 832 and a tap set. Now these tap sets are pretty simple. You know, you insert your tap into the chuck and you tighten the chuck, and that is your tap. It's important to remember to use lubricant on these. I use just normal motor oil as lubricant. If a little dab will do you, a big glob will screw you, but not in this case. Oil is a good thing for your taps so you don't break off a tap. For this project I'm also using a spring-loaded punch, so it actually leaves a dent that the drill bit will set in, and we're getting ready to set out. And oh, you need a cordless drill, and also I use my calipers in this tidbit of video. I'm setting up a couple of DV6s and a Graflex right now, and I kind of wanted to show you some of the prep work that I do. So number one, this is my chassis for this one, which this is a Dimitri stock chassis for the DV6, and basically I've installed a battery in the DV6 where it's going to be, and then I'm going to insert the chassis in the DV6, and then I'm going to take my what's going to be my NeoPixel Hilt adapter and drop it down until it seats against the battery. So you can see my NeoPixel adapter down there, it's seated against the battery. Now I'm going to take my handy caliper, and I'm going to measure the distance down to my NeoPixel module. Then I'm going to come here on the Saber, and I know that module's about yay wide, so I'm going to punch a hole where I'm going to drill and tap the LED retention, or the NeoPixel module retention as it were. Then on the DV6, another problem I have is LED retention, and the clamp goes here on the DV6 and it'll hide this, but I'm going to go ahead and drill and tap an 832 retention screw right here for the chassis. That will hold the chassis in. So now I'm done with all that. Try and get my module out of there. Bada bing. So there's my 7/8 NeoPixel module, which it's basically going to sit right here, and the wires will run down this wire channel. So when I seated it there, that'll be fine, because when I wire it, it'll be wired tight. And then when I send my chassis home to install it, I'm going to drill and tap an 832 retention screw here. You'll never see it, because on a DV6 this outer shroud covers this inner core, and the other retention screw that I drilled is underneath the clamp. So this is a clamp on a DV6 that I've installed, and I actually have an 832 retention screw underneath this clamp that you can't see, and this is an installed Saber. So I just brought this out for reference so you guys can see kind of what I'm working with here. That's the core of a Corbant DV6. So again, I'm going to have my LED module retention here and my chassis retention here. This is pretty common on any lightsaber to have to drill and tap for blade retention, and you know, I'm just letting you guys know it's there. Also, by the way, safety third. Don't forget your safety glasses when you're doing this. So I've got my DV6 core that we've marked with the punch in my vise, wrapped in leather to protect the core, and you can see my hole that I punched right here. And I'm going to start drilling slowly. I want to make sure I'm straight up and down. I'm going to start drilling my hole slowly, and then once the drill bit's gone into my punch hole, which is feeling pretty solid there, then I'll go ahead and speed it up. Oops, didn't get my vise tight enough. That's a problem with using leather, is it's now, that is our chassis retention hole, which we'll tap in a bit. But right now we're going to put it back in the vise and clamp it down and do our LED module retention. Actually, you know what? You don't want to over tighten the vise because you'll bend the aluminum. But if you'll remember, this is our chassis retention hole there. Starting out slow. Once the drill's taking a bite. Down we go. One more pass to make sure the hole is through. Take it out of the vise. Now we are going to deburr the inside. So there's my blade retention, my NeoPixel module retention hole. I'll put a sanding drum on here. I'm going to deburr this hole on the inside. And I'll deburr this other hole. That way the core can slide easily in and out of our hole. Now we're going to tap. So the first thing in tapping is clean our tap. Add some oil. Oil is good on the tap. Now we're going to add our LED, our NeoPixel module retention, in a few turns, out a few turns. If it starts feeling tight, back out. Let those little scraps of aluminum come on out of the hole. And there she's all the way through. You can tell it's all the way through when it spins easily. Now of course you're going to have to clean the oil off these cores before you install them. Again, I use isopropyl alcohol for that. Now this one's into some thicker aluminum. So when I begin tapping the hole, again we want to clean our tap of burrs. I would use paper towels, but you can't find any. So I'm using my fingers and my shirt. Remember, you want to go in a little bit, out a little bit. Let those aluminum shavings come out. If the tap starts feeling tight, stop and back out. I know it seems slow, but you're making progress. You don't want to break the taps off in these holes, because if you break a hardened steel tap in this aluminum core, you potentially have ruined your aluminum core. So you don't want to break these taps off, and now this tap seems like it's all the way through. It's spinning freely. Yep, we're all the way through. Now I'm going to back the tap out. And voila! We've got our NeoPixel module retention hole and our chassis retention hole. Now remember, this chassis retention hole will be covered by the clamp, and the NeoPixel module retention will be covered by the Graflex shroud that goes over the front of the DV6. Let's test our retention screw. So I'm going to drop my retention screw in there and thread it in, and it threads in nice and smooth, and clear any residual threads out of there, and it looks like it's going to be flush, which is awesome. That's why it's good to have an assortment of these, and I need to upgrade my stash because I'm starting to run low of different sizes. But when I drop my LED module down in there now, which let's do that. Let's put my chassis in, and then we're going to drop the LED module retention down in there, and then we're going to tighten this up and test. Now my NeoPixel module is retained by this 832 that's in the core that I drilled. Now we're going to do the same thing for the chassis, and then let's find one of these that will fit. I'm hoping it will be that one, because this is a deeper hole, because this one has to be flush because the clamp's going over it, and it looks like that's going to be our huckleberry right there. It's going to be more than flush. So there goes our retention screw into the hole, clearing out loose threads. Let's get those burrs out of there, and let's insert the chassis and see how we like that. Now I can tighten this set screw, and our chassis is now retained without glue, which is nice. So that's just a quick lesson on drilling and tapping. All these lightsabers require work to them in some way, but drilling and tapping a hole in these aluminum hilts is not really a major project. Wear safety glasses. Don't get your clothing too close to the drill. It's best not to hold the item you're drilling in your hand. For our next modification project, this is on a Graflex core that I'm working on. And this is for a friend of mine in Florida, and I wanted to show you all this as well. So this is going to be a Force Awakens Graflex when I'm done with it, and he wants a full shine through glass eye. So I want to show you a little problem here. When you buy these glass eyes, whether they're replicas or whatever, and if you're working on a 2.0, of course you need a Graflex eye with 2.0 threading, which this one is, but you can see there that it can't even get to the threads because the core is in the way. And not only that, on the core you only have a small hole, which would just give you peak shine through. So I'm going to take out the core and show you what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bore a hole into the core, because the core doesn't matter right here. Remember, I want a large hole right here that this glass eye will fit down into, so that when I thread my glass eye, and this is a brand new hilt, I haven't even threaded this glass eye before, so it's probably going to be not a fun fit, and it's not. But the fact of the matter is I'm going to be threading this glass eye into my 2.0 core, but I want it to sit down flush. I want all those threads done. So I'm going to need this big hole in the core, and that's also going to give me full shine through. And then, I'll mill out this glass eye so it's a brass eye for TFA. And, I'll show you how I do all that as well. I was able to get the glass eye into the core, into the outer shroud, fully seated. So that's how you want it. You want it fully seated, and it just took some coaxing. When these things come from China, they're notoriously, the threads are boogered up, and I'll have to work on the threads for the top button too, because they weren't very good either. But the bottom line is that, once you thread these a couple times, you're pretty much golden. but now the glass eye threads on there just fine. So what's remaining for us to do now is to drill out the core. You can see that glass eye threads down in there. So we want full shine through on the core where my finger is in there. And the only way to do that is to cut out this hole in the core. And I'm going to use a progressive drill bit in my drill press to make that happen. So we're getting ready to show you that, and then we'll show you how I mill down this glass eye. Now, I've got this Graflex 2.5 core. This is a 1-inch blade holder in my drill press in leather, and I've got my progressive drill bit. I have it centered in the bottom hole, which is where the shine through happens, and I've got my chuck and I've tightened my progressive drill bit. We're going to fire this puppy up. Of course, I am wearing safety glasses, and I'm going to keep my hands clear of this because the leather that I have in the vise to protect it might be a little bit big, but I'm going to keep my hands clear. But here we go. Making the hole for the glass eye so we get full shine through. And I believe that is it. Now, to test it, bring our glass eye over here, and looks like it's close. Let's put our blade holder in here. Oops, I've got the red button screwed in there. We're going to put the blade holder in, and let's go ahead and put the we're going to put let's put this button into center the core. So I'm just going to screw in the long post button to center the core. Now our core is centered in there, and now you can see our hole in the core for our full shine through glass eye. Now we're going to put the glass eye in there and try and thread it, and it looks like I may need to go a little bit deeper. So we're going to go a little bit deeper. Let's look and see what it's doing in the core. Looking pretty good. Looks like there's just a little bit of a lip here where it's not wanting to go. So we're going to recenter, and I'll be back with you. Alright, we're back. I want to make sure I'm not going too bad through the other side. Shut that off. Stops. Remove it from my vise. Shake it out. This is meatball surgery. Remachining these to fit the glass eye, but usually it works out. bada bing. So now our glass eye is in there like a beaut. Looks like we'll have to take a little bit of that glass eye off, but you can see it sticking out a little bit. Let's test it with a piece of 1-inch blade. Yeah, it's stopping the 1-inch blade, so of course I could leave that little bit on for blade retention, but you know, when I take these ridges off, you're not going to be able to twist that, but you can see it works for blade retention. But I think I'm going to tap a different blade retention screw in here than I normally do. But now we've got full shine through on this core. Now let's show you how we mill this glass eye down. Now, how do we turn these glass eyes with these ridged sides into a brass eye? Well, these are made out of brass and they're plated with nickel. And what I do is I use a Dremel sanding drum and I seat that sucker on a sanding drum. Put that Dremel on high speed to check for balance. And I put this thing, of course I'm wearing safety glasses, and I put this thing on a file. You can already see it turning to brass. I try to round the edges so they're not sharp. Then I'm going to take the face and round the face. See how that's looking. That is looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to feel for sharp edges. I don't want sharp edges, and I'm kind of really happy with that. So now to polish it, I'm going to get rid of the file. And you can see the brass shavings here. I'm going to get rid of the file, and I'm going to 400 grit sandpaper to polish it. I'm going to make sure I take off those edges. The face, a little bit of polish on the face. You can see that really taking a shine. And I am really happy with that. Now, it's going to be hot, so you want to let it cool, but that's how I turn a glass eye into a brass eye. And I'm sure that's how Shamim did it. So I spent the better part of this afternoon here machining 3 hilts that I'm working on. This is a Graflex with a 1-inch blade holder from Mike Perez. It's going to have a GAW 3D Night chassis. What I didn't show you was I had to drill and tap a blade retention screw here, LED module, a NeoPixel module retention screw here, and a chassis retention screw here. In addition, I also had to drill a wire passage hole here for my clamp switch wires, because he wants us to have red button activation, clamp switch activation, and clamp switch auxiliary. So this is the channel for my red button activation wires, and I will put them in parallel with my clamp activation wires. So I had to mill this channel from the main red button over to where the clamp wires will pass into the chassis from. And then I'm going to melt a hole into the chassis so I can get my wires in there. It's going to be an interesting job. but nonetheless, that shows you, you know, and also which we did show in this video, which was milling this hole for the glass eye. So there's the hole for the glass eye. That is NeoPixel module retention, so the NeoPixel module will be in behind the glass eye, so we'll have full shine through. And inner core done. So now we can go start wiring this Saber. But that kind of gives you an idea. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, well, I can do that. You know, I have just spent a good part of 4 hours doing all the, you know, the millwork on these 3 Sabers. And it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. So when you pay an installer to install your Saber, there's a lot of work that goes into it that you have no idea about. It's a lot more than just soldering on a soundboard. It's working out engineering problems like this. You have to figure these things out. And sometimes these lightsabers really don't come equipped for you to wire them the way you want. And you can work out these engineering issues and make your life a lot simpler. But knowing and understanding where everything's going to run and where everything sits is a big part of the problem. But thank you all for watching. Hope you've liked this tidbit here. I have not done any tutorials on all the machine work that goes into building a lightsaber, but this is a hint at some of the work that goes into building a lightsaber that you may not have known about.